right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to First and Short, your first place to get short bits of college football news and analysis. I'm Aaron,
What's up? This is Mashfik.
and welcome to the show. We have a lot to talk about today. Before we get started, I definitely want you guys to subscribe to our show on all platforms if you're not already. We are on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. So please, please, please like and subscribe and just interact with our videos and let us know what you think.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so we are, currently about three-fourths of the way through the college football weekend, week one. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today are, some of the big game highlights. We will be talking about, quarterbacks in their first year starting and how they did this weekend. Who the big winner of the weekend was, and then we're going to have a new segment talking about, who had the Saturday on Saturday.
Nice.
Yep. With that being said, we'll get into our first big game highlight of the weekend. Let's talk about a little bit about Alabama at Florida State this weekend. Mash, your
A
thoughts?
Yep, absolutely. I think this was probably one of the bigger shockers of the weekend. Alabama at Florida State in Tallahassee. The rain was here and there an issue, but Florida State, they do the upset. They complete the upset. 31-17. There used to be a time when calling out Alabama meant that your team was about to be put through hell for 60 minutes. You remember that one Vanderbilt player when he was like, "You're about to see what SEC football really looks." Yeah, that guy. And then Nick Saban came through Nashville and cooked them for 59-0. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to kind of reevaluate what Alabama is right now. We have entered into an era where a player like Thomas Castellanos can call out Alabama. This guy was playing at Boston College last year. He calls
Mm-hmm.
out Alabama and then he actually runs all over you. So we're just in a different era of college football right now, and we just have to get used to that. Castellanos, shout out to him. He was 9 for 14 with 152 yards through the air, and he had 16 carries for 78 yards on the ground. And that also includes a rushing touchdown. So he was looking great. He backed up everything that he had to say about Alabama. Ty Simpson, I don't know. He's been kind of waiting his turn for a while. He's been in the Alabama program for a while, but he looked lost at times. Ryan Williams, he looked like he was 17. I know he's not 17 anymore, but he looked young. Run game, it looked kind of anemic. They averaged 2.6 yards per carry versus Florida State's 4.7. I don't know. Was there anything else in the stats you feel like, Aaron, that we were missing here? Like Florida State was just a better team.
Sure, sure. So, if you look at high level at the stats, you mentioned Ty Simpson looked lost at times. At a very quick glance, he had 254 yards, two passing touchdowns, no interceptions. So if you just look at that high level, you're like, wow, like he didn't
Yeah.
have a terrible game. And then, you look at Tommy Castellanos, he only had 152 yards and zero passing touchdowns. And so the question is, how did Castellanos? How did he have the better game?
You're right.
Um, well, you got to look a little bit deeper. You got to look at another stat. It's called quarterback rating, right?
Hmm.
And so he had a quarterback rating that was twice as high as Ty Simpson's.
Hmm.
And why? It's because the quarterback rating, it's comprised of a couple of different components. The first one is completion percentage. So even though Ty Simpson had almost 100 more passing yards,
Hmm.
he threw the ball 43 times and only completed about half of them. Whereas, Castellanos, he threw the ball 14 times and he completed 9 of them. So you see a much higher percentage there. Uh, Yards per attempt, since he only completed about 9 passes and it went for 152 yards, that sounds like nothing but deep balls and
Right.
and shots on the field.
Hmm.
Um, Touchdowns per attempt. So again, maybe Castellanos would have had a better rating if he would have threw some passing touchdowns, but he balanced that out with his rushing yards. And then interceptions per attempt. Nobody threw any interceptions, so That was a positive sign for both sides of the ball. But all in all, um, like you said, Castellanos, he called out his game, and I mean, he came and he showed up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What was going on defense though? It seemed like there was obvious difficulty containing a more mobile quarterback on Alabama's part, and there was missed tackles all day for Alabama, which is again, we're just gonna have to get used to Alabama maybe not being as um, strict on defense. What was it about each of these teams' identity that led to the result that we saw today?
Sure, sure. So, for me, starting with FSU, I think it's their identity this year, from what we're seeing, is an immense level of confidence, or I mean, some could call it cockiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nonetheless, I contribute their identity now and their new success to their new leader in Thomas Castellanos.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy who obviously is going to be a problem in the ACC. And
Mm-hmm.
he embodies what a dual threat quarterback is, and that's somebody who can take off and do video game like runs,
Yeah,
or somebody who can throw the deep ball. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do. Did not have them on my radar, but I think I should now.
for sure.
Um, on the other side, so you have Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, who honestly, in my opinion, he relies too much on the quarterback to get him out of the game and get out of there with a win.
Yeah, live and die by the quarterback.
Live and die by the quarterback, right? There has to be a lot of help from the supporting cast. The
Mm-hmm.
defense has to be more efficient and execute. We talked a little bit about this new era of Alabama football, and I think we're just so accustomed to seeing the old Alabama rely on discipline,
Mm-hmm.
execution, and then when it came down to it, my athletes are better than yours. But I think
Mm-hmm.
we're missing, that execution and discipline, even if they do have the better athletes right now. And
Oh,
so,
okay, gotcha. Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can be cleaned up on their side of the ball. Will they ever get cleaned up? I don't know. I feel like we just always see DeBoer on the sideline with
Chilling.
with a blank expression, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's not the Saban would, blow a gasket
yeah.
while leading a team 57-0. So it's just a
Right.
completely different dynamic. Yep. Um, so moving on from that, I think next on the list, the next big game we're going to talk about is Texas at Ohio State. That was a great way to kick off the weekend. What are
I
your
yeah,
thoughts on
I
this?
yeah, I just want to say that I called Ohio State by 6 points. They won by 7. Now I will say that we thought it would be a high scoring game. It was a very defensive game. In retrospect, it should have been a little bit more obvious probably to us that two first time quarterbacks playing against a really good defense on the other side probably would have had a harder time moving the ball, which is exactly what we kind of saw. The first half was, I don't remember the score, but it was pretty stalemate at the beginning. I was thinking like, what halftime adjustment did Texas make? And they started moving the ball a lot better the second half, right? I think they scored, in the fourth quarter, or whatever. But
Mhm.
I was thinking, Aaron, you were over at my house. We were talking about what halftime adjustment did they make. I think the game plan was to risk Arch's life. That's what I put in my notes yesterday. Let's just we got nothing to lose. We have to win this game. And so he started running a lot more. He started getting hit a lot more. But yeah, ultimately it wasn't enough. The final score to that one was Ohio State 14, Texas 7. Um, what else? What other themes did you see in that game, Aaron?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about the trenches. One thing that I saw that was a real positive for Ohio State, they gave their quarterback more than enough time to make big throws when it mattered. You saw a little bit of sloppiness, some drop passes from their wide receiver
Yep.
room, but
Hmm.
I was really impressed with the poise that Sayan had in the game, and the
Yep.
opportunities he had. Um, Texas on the other end could not do the same. With their rebuilt offensive line, they couldn't protect Manning consistently, right?
Yeah.
And then the run game never really got going. So there's
Hmm.
opportunity to improve there on that side of the ball for Texas. Some of the key impacts or key game changers that I saw. Um, Ohio State in the second quarter, they had a 13 play 80-yard drive. I feel like, that was a very key statement drive. A lot of times in
Yeah.
football, we get so concerned on the whole game as it's going on, but football is about a game of winning series, of winning
Hmm.
drives. If you
Hmm.
can win this drive and just wait until the next one, win this drive, that's what it's about. That's how you win those key moments especially in low score games like this. Let
Yeah.
me win this drive so that way I can put my team at the advantage for the rest of the game. And
Yeah.
so
And
that was
13 plays, that probably ate up a lot of clock too.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so mentally it probably did something to the defense a little bit where a little bit there on that drive. Um Key impacts on Texas's side of the ball. There was, a couple of penalties that haunted Texas, but there were a lot of missed opportunities, especially in the red zone.
Hmm.
A stat that I have down right here, they went 1 for 5 on fourth down conversions. That's
That's a sad day.
sad day. Very hey, sad day.
We'll
Might have
talk
to
about
put them
that.
down the yeah, we
Yeah.
will, we will. Um, I think two of those missed fourth quarter opportunities happened in the red zone. Of course, hindsight's 2020. If they're red zone opportunities and you're going for it in the fourth quarter instead of kicking a field goal, I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
It's,
difference in you being closer in the score. I mean, you were
yeah.
down how much? Down they lost by 7. You kicked two field goals there. I mean, you're only down by another field goal if you get another shot at it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
just something to think about, but that's hindsight. Overall, I think the impacts to the teams, after this game, um, Ohio State, they just got a really, really big boost to their resume. Um,
Hmm.
I think they can go well into the rest of their schedule, go into conference play. Heck, they can lose 2 conference games. I think they still have a shot to be in the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
um, Ohio State's, resume is pretty much good to go. Um, Texas, they're going to drop from the number 1, and questions are going to swirl about Manning if he's ready for the spotlight. We saw a lot of different things from that team. Some of the things that caught my eye, some of the surprises were some of his throws, under pressure, being in this hostile environment, were off target by a
Yeah.
lot. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that was his super off target passing was definitely something that caught my eye. Um, Moving along, we'll touch on not so marquee games, but games that were very interesting to watch over the weekend. Anyway, in either case, Georgia Tech at Colorado. Georgia Tech beats Colorado 27-20. That was a interesting, fun game to watch. Haynes King, like heroic kind of performance. He sealed a victory. He had a game-winning 45-yard touchdown. He had all of Georgia Tech's 3 touchdowns on the ground, and he had a career high of 156 yards rushing. They were just running all over Colorado. This is an issue that has persisted since last season. That's something they just really have to focus on. Otherwise, teams are just going to continue to do that. Funny enough, Georgia Tech had a lot of early turnovers. They had 3 turnovers on their first 3 possessions. But one thing about the team that you can say, their defense held strong, and they only allowed 7 points on those three turnovers. That makes them sound like a really resilient team, and that's going to build a lot of culture. I think, even though even if the offense is uh, faltering, not doing what they need to do, the defense can step up. Um, Caden Salter, the transfer from Liberty, starting quarterback at Colorado now. He had flashes, but he really couldn't get into a rhythm until the end of the game. And Colorado's defense, they had, like I said, they had a reoccurring issue where they have an inability to stop the run. Um, yeah, and then I know Aaron, you have some notes on the 2 timeouts. I don't know what that was. I mean, you have the timeouts in your pocket. Why not use them?
Exactly. So, I just chalk it up to poor, clock management. These are the key moments where you have to think about all the different scenarios, the different variables that come into play on this final drive. And I think they just let too much time run off. 2 timeouts are running at the end of the game. Dion threw I think he ended up calling, a Hail Mary pass once they crossed midfield as the clock ran out, but I don't even think you're in that position if you use your
Yeah.
time wisely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So then, on to our next key matchup or marquee game of the weekend. You know, you have LSU at Clemson. Again, it was the tale of two quarterbacks in a battle with highly ranked potential Heisman hopefuls. Um, Garrett Nussmeier had the final say though. He led
Yeah.
a clutch fourth quarter drive that resulted in two go ahead into the go ahead touchdown, while Clemson's Cade Klubnik he had a final drive and it stalled out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, LSU, they finally, won their home opener for the first time since 2019. They did it. They
Nice.
broke the curse.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna give kudos to their defense. You know, they made a very crucial stop in the fourth quarter in the red zone late in the game.
Hmm.
Finally showed up. We don't have to see, you know, uh, Kelly bang his fist on the
Right. Right. Right.
on,
We're still talking
he
about this.
yeah, exactly. So much better response to the game opener. Garrett Nussmeier, he had a slow start, but he had two touchdown drives in the second half. He threw the go-ahead touchdown that was an 8-yard pass in the fourth quarter. So, he was a guy that was probably like most teams and most quarterbacks getting those first game jitters out, but
Hmm.
he became himself more naturally in the second half. Um, Clemson offense, they struggled to get into the rhythm. Klubnik was limited to I think about 230 yards, and he had an interception. Um, the Tigers' offense was particularly hurt by an injury to their wide receiver. I think it was Antonio
Yeah.
Williams. So, you know, struggling to get to their rhythm and into their groove fully. But looking at Clemson's schedule, I don't know if they have a tougher opponent like this until they probably play South Carolina at the end of the year. So
Yeah.
they have plenty of time to rebuild. I think there's not much of a reason to overreact yet.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yep.
I want to own up to my mistakes. I was off on my prediction here. I thought Clemson would win by 7 or 8, I think, and it was the other way around. So I'll own up to my mistake. We also made a mistake on this next game on our last week's underdog pick. Syracuse at Tennessee. Tennessee whooped Syracuse 45-26 here in Atlanta. Tennessee had a really fast start. They jumped out to a 17-0 first quarter lead with a field goal, a touchdown, and a defensive scoop and score. Syracuse's ground game, well, they had a bad ground game, but Yassine Willis, he had a strong performance though, 91 yards and 3 touchdowns. It almost led to a comeback. They were having energy. It seemed like they're only down by 10 now. They're only down by 8 now, but ultimately that fell short. Tennessee's new quarterback, Joey Aguilar. I gotta say, I didn't think he'd get a grasp of the playbook that fast. Or maybe they just kept it simple for him. I don't know. But in his debut, he passed for over 247 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, and I think he has cemented his place as a leader. The new leader on this team. Honestly, we didn't pick Syracuse to win. We just thought it would be closer than the odds were saying. So my question here, Aaron, we talked about this for a little bit. Joey Aguilar, he came late in the spring portal. How much can you learn in 4 months, as a quarterback in a system like Josh Heupel's? How much can you learn in 4 months? Like, what does a playbook have to look like for him to be successful, so quickly?
Sure, sure. So yeah, I mean, first off, kudos to him. I mean, this guy's probably been at 4 or 5 different
Yeah,
colleges in his career right now. Learning a different playbook like that, I feel like he just has to completely immerse himself into the culture and into the staff and team of Tennessee. So he's probably spent some long days and long nights just studying, being a student of the game, and really understanding what Tennessee's offensive coordinator and head coach wants to do. So honestly, in short layman terms, I feel like it's a time commitment like no other. Quarterback is just a position that's unlike any other, where you have to do a little bit deeper dive into really understanding first what personnel and what concepts your team wants to run, but also figuring out how to digest and read the defenses and make adjustments and make the right reads based on what somebody's showing you. So yeah.
yeah.
kudos to Joey Aguilar. Yep. But yeah, speaking of quarterbacks in their first year, we have a list and highlights of first year quarterbacks in their first year starts. So let's get into that. First things first, Bryce Underwood, the true freshman at
Hmm.
Michigan. Kudos to them. He led them into a 34-17 win over New Mexico. He completed 21 of 31 passes. He had 251 yards and a touchdown.
Hmm.
But the hype around this true freshman, I mean, it could be justified. He looked composed and effective, and you know, Michigan passing the ball last year is not something we saw much of.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Maybe that price tag was worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, NIL, it
Yeah.
changes things. Next on the list, we have Gunnar Stockton. He had a strong debut this year. He was announced the leader and starter for this team at the beginning of the season. Last year, he had to step in and
Yep.
come into come into the team as a starter in a very difficult moment.
Hmm.
He showed a lot of poise this game. Georgia won the game against Marshall, 45-7. He completed 14 of 24 passes for 190 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, and he also rushed for 73 yards and rushed for 2 touchdowns. He showed off his dual threat ability against Marshall. The passing game was probably not featured in Mike Bobo's game plan, but that O line was looking shaky in the pass protection at times.
Hmm.
But I liked what I saw overall. I thought Gunner did a really good job, and he brings a different edge at quarterback that we haven't seen recently.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Mm.
Jaden Maeva at USC. So last year he did start some games, but he wasn't the starter at the beginning of the season. So that's how we kind of made this list. But Maeva, he had a highly efficient night. They beat Missouri State 73-13. He completed 15 of 18 passes, and he threw for almost 300 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns in just one half of play. So he was very efficient there. He was almost perfect in his limited time on the field. So I think he proved to be a smart play caller, and he'll be pretty efficient, an efficient distributor of the football moving forward. Marcel Reed, he had another similar situation. He started some games last year, but he's starting the season this year. He threw for a career high 4 touchdowns and 289 yards as they beat UTSA yesterday, 42-24. He completed 22 of his 34 passes, and he actually only rushed for 41 yards. Typically, he runs a little bit more, but maybe that they're trying out something different this year. So he had a career best performance, and he set new records for himself. So that'll be a fun team to watch with Marcel Reed there. So those were the first year quarterbacks. They all won their games. We got some other big winners of the weekend. And you'll it's funny that we chose these specific winners because we've also mentioned them on the hottest coaching seat segment before. So, Aaron, do you want to go first? Who was your biggest winner of the weekend?
Sure, sure. So I'm gonna have to go with a prediction that I was actually wrong about last week. Hugh Freeze, and the Auburn Tigers, they got a win on the road, 38-24 versus Baylor. So very, very good start to the season. His quarterback, Jackson Arnold, who he kind of handheld during the
Fall
preseason
camp.
fall
Yep.
camp, telling the defense to ease up. I guess it worked out. Jackson Arnold had 108 passing yards and 137 rushing yards. So, big win for those guys. Now they can breathe a little bit as they go into the season and get ready to move into conference play. So that's my big winner of the weekend.
Yeah. Maybe Hugh Freeze's seat isn't as hot. Maybe it's a little bit cooler. But maybe Dave Aranda's seat is a little bit warmer now. I mean, this guy
Yeah.
hasn't been winning at Baylor. My biggest win is going to be probably the biggest upset of the weekend, Florida State's win over Alabama. Again, Mike Norvell, we mentioned, hot seat type of coach. But if you beat Alabama at home, your season opener, I feel like that buys you a little time. And if they can continue what we saw as a strength from yesterday, I think his job could be secure moving forward. So those were our biggest winners of the weekend. We want to actually play a new game in a new segment. We've mentioned it before. It's called Saturday. Sadder meaning like sad, boohoo. We picked 8 teams, and we seeded them 1 through 8 of all teams. This week it happens to be all the teams that all these teams lost, I believe. Yeah, all these teams lost. And we seated them how we wanted to because we are the committee and we are the judges of that, judge, jury, and whatever. And so we have well, I'll just go through the 8 seeds here. So we have Alabama at 1, biggest loss of the week. They deserve the number 1 seed. We have Texas at number 2 seed, Boise State at the number 3, Colorado 4, Clemson 5, Syracuse 6, Kansas State 7, and Northwestern at 8. And so what we'll do, we'll have a quarterfinal, semifinal, and then final. Typical 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, that type of playoff situation. And what we'll do is we will put up a bad stat for the number 1 seed versus a bad stat of the number 8 seed. And we will decide as a group which stat was worse, which team had the sadder day. As the team moves through the playoffs, we will then end with the sad boys of the week, the saddest team of the week. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first round, we have Alabama versus Northwestern. We have Texas versus Kansas State. We have Boise State versus Syracuse. And then we have Colorado versus Clemson. So, Aaron, my question to you, number 1 versus number 8, Alabama versus Northwestern. The first bad stat for Alabama, they only had 3 yards per carry on the ground. Northwestern, they were held scoreless after the first quarter. So my question to you, which team had the sadder day?
Sure, sure. So I'm gonna have to go with Alabama here. Um, Again, we talked about DeBoer's offense and how it just heavily relies on the quarterback. I feel like if you're gonna have an effective offense at all in this league, especially in the SEC, you gotta be able to run the ball. So three
Yeah,
yards per carry is just not acceptable.
I agree with that. Plus, if you're only held scoreless after the first quarter, you still have 3 quarters to make it up, right? So, yeah,
Exactly.
I'll agree with the 3 yards per carry there. So number 2 Texas versus number 7 Kansas State. Which one is worse? 1 of 5 on 4th down conversion or 5 of 13 on 3rd down conversion?
I'm gonna have to go with 1 of 5 on 4th down conversions by Texas. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but some of those moments could have turned into field goals or opportunities for maybe punting the ball downfield and giving them their defense a little bit of better field advantage. 5 of 13 on 3rd down, yeah, that is bad, but turning the ball over on 4th down, I think has the bigger impact. Yep.
Gotcha.
So I'm gonna go Texas. I see we have Boise State and Syracuse next on the list. So I'm gonna ask you this question, Mass.
Yeah.
Um, what is worse, Boise State turning the ball over 3 times to South Florida 0, or Syracuse being down 0-17 in the hole to begin the game?
I'm going to go, let's see. So we have a -3 turnover deficit or 0-17 hold to begin the game. I don't know. 0-17, that's pretty sad just because it sucks so much energy out of, your team, your fans that are in the stadium. I'm going to go 0-17 hold to begin the game. That's pretty sad.
Mm-hmm. And then lastly on the first round list, we have Colorado and Clemson. So Colorado, their defense gave up 320 rushing yards against Georgia Tech. That's pretty insane. Clemson, they had about 1.6 yards per carry. So their run game was little to not effective at all.
Mm-hmm.
Who had the
Uh,
Saturday between those two?
yeah, I think only because this is a reoccurring issue with Colorado, giving up all those rushing yards, and then
Mhm.
Clemson, Clemson is Clemson. They're supposed to be able to. We've had so many good running backs come out of Clemson. For them to go all of a sudden their average falls down to 1.6 yards per carry. I'm gonna have to go to the Clemson route there. I think they were the sadder team. They had the sadder day.
Okay.
Cool.
All
All
right.
right, so now we are in the semifinals. We have Alabama versus Texas. Uh, so, Aaron, I will ask you who had the Saturday. Alabama was 2-5 on fourth. Texas and Arch Manning, he was 37% off target on his throws. So between those two, these are some heavy hitters. Between
Uh-huh.
these two, who had the Saturday?
Ah, man, this is the tough one because again, those fourth down conversions that are turnovers because you don't convert, those are big impactors. But with the Texas Ohio State game being so close, a third of Arch's, throws being off target could have been the difference between a win on Saturday. So I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to go with Texas on having the Saturday with this one.
Okay.
Yeah. And so next on the list we have Syracuse and Clemson mash. So Um, the second stat we have for Clemson is, they were 3 of 13 on third down.
Hmm.
Uh, and then for Syracuse, they failed on 2 2-point conversions. Who had the Saturday out of those two teams?
Well, considering you could have added a bunch more 2-point conversions and Syracuse still wouldn't have won. I'm gonna have
Mhm.
to go with 3 for 13 on third down. That's probably, I mean, that's tough because we didn't look up what their fourth down conversion was, but it probably wasn't that much better. So I'm gonna go with Clemson having the Saturday. So now we are down to our finals. We have Texas versus Clemson. One of these teams had the saddest Saturday. Texas was 1 of 5 on their fourth down conversion. So that means they had 4 turnover on downs. And Clemson had no passing touchdowns. That's tough. So
Mm.
Aaron, I'll leave it up to you. You are the final judge on this one. Texas or Clemson, who had the saddest day?
Okay. When you sum it all up and we talked about, the different bad stats between the two teams, I'm gonna have to go with Texas because I think their stats all revolve around one guy, and that's
Mm,
Arch Manning.
yeah.
If their offense would have been more productive, and if he would have lived up to the hype that was out there, could have been a difference in them winning the game. So I'm gonna say Texas had the saddest Saturday in
All
week
right.
one.
So our
Yeah.
inaugural sad boys of the week, Texas Longhorns.
Mhm.
Well, guys, that is it for today's episode. We pretty much covered everything that happened in week one. We will come back Thursday. We will cover the Sunday game and the Monday game, and then we'll also give a preview of what's coming up in week two. So appreciate you guys watching. Once again, follow us on all the platforms, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts. We really appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you.